Hello, starting a new series about learning electronics. When I was younger, there was yet to be PCs and computers that were inexpensive enough for the household use and for the preteen to get a hold of. But I was still interested in the kind of things that would eventually come to pass, like little pet dogs, primarily from Doctor Who and K9. And with that came the need to know electronics. And back then, if it came to electronics, and you wanted to get something, you went to Radio Shack. Radio Shack had a whole series of books by Mr. Forrest Mims, or Dr. Forrest Mims, I believe, which were very useful. This book was available about the same time as this book, but since this was instructional and I read through the first 100 pages of it several times while I was in the store, I saved my money and bought this book, which was the project book. Had all the different projects that you could build with the integrated circuits from Radio Shack. This is the back and forth flasher on the grill of the Knight Rider car, which I thought would be cool to build at one point. And they all, well, not all of them, but a good number of them start with the venerable 555 timer chip. It's usually clocking some other circuit chip. Here's some 7400 NAND gate chip. And so you would need the NAND gate chip. Looks like you'd use all 4 gates in the NAND, 555 timer, and the 74193, which is the sequencer. This was basically set up to where the lights would start in one end, go to the other, and then come back. Visually appealing, it says. Well, it certainly worked for Knight Rider. So this was the book I initially bought. You can tell it's old and yellowed, and it's a first edition version. When I got out of high school and into the Coast Guard electronics training, went to Coast Guard's training school in about 1990, I guess it was 89. I bought this book, and as you can see, it had also been around from that time. And these are some excellent books on getting started in electronics, starting from zero. They compress a whole lot of knowledge in 100 pages.
Be sure to check out Mim's website if you'd like to buy the latest edition.
My interest in electronics was revived about 6 months ago when I came across Ben Ater's excellent series on building an 8-bit computer from integrated circuit chips on breadboards. He has 3 series. One that goes from basic electronics, basically this green book, up to logic gates. And another one that talks about digital electronics and logic gates and how they interconnect integrated circuit chips, from integrated circuit chips to a CPU, and then using a CPU with peripheral chips to build an actual computer system. Between those 3 playlists, you get about 80% of a computer science degree as far as the hardware side of computer science is concerned, and a really core understanding of what it means for an instruction to do something on a processor. So I highly recommend those video series by Ben Ater if you're interested in getting into electronics. We're not going to get that far down into the weeds. We're going to mostly show off projects and new ideas. So one of the projects I had a while back was this little battery case for a breadboard. Obviously, these breadboards generally come like this. You would have an external power supply that you would plug into the power rails. These holes are connected along this way, and then each one of these rows are connected. And you can kind of see that by the little metal strips that you can see through the socket. We'll do some projects on a breadboard. We got this little 3D printed project to put 4 AA batteries in a box with a switch and a power light. So this was a cool little project I thought of when I thought, hey, it would be nice if your breadboards already came with a built-in power supply. So this is a little project up on Thingiverse you can download. I have another version of it here. This is the pink version, since I had pink filament left. And it comes with a built-in LED for power. So you don't have to put this little separate indicator LED on it. And these boards are also 3D printed and a 3D print design. They were designed around the idea that I was kind of thinking, you're out in space somewhere. Using electricity to generate heat is kind of inefficient. It's burns up a lot of power on your limited resources. So I thought rather than heat solder, you'd use a solder paste. And so this is designed to mimic the breadboard design and give you little wells where once you put in all your components and flatten out the leads, you can sort of glue them in place in each one of these troughs. And then this can sit into project case. We call these thin boards. And this is thin board small, and as you can imagine, thin board large is regular size breadboard. I've yet to do any projects with that, with the actually gluing the parts in place with solder paste. That will be in a future video. Rather than utilizing discrete components and having to purchase all of that over again, although I did buy some, I thought, there's got to be a place to simulate this. And sure enough, there is. It's TinkerCAD. So TinkerCAD was originally designed with the mindset towards support of things like Ater tiny microcontroller. Actually, that's the microcontroller. Or the Arduino Uno series of microcontrollers. And this gives you the ability to get use a full-on processor rather than having to deal with discrete digital logic. Although some projects, that's all you need is discrete digital logic. I believe it was Pong that was the stand-up video game version of Pong was created using discrete components. There was no central processing unit or processor in the game itself. You might have to correct me on that. There might have been some other game. But in any case, so TinkerCAD is a great place to go to try out some breadboard designs. And they have support for the Arduino Uno. They have support for the AT Tiny. This is actually the AT Tiny programmer mounted next to my little play area. And this was going to be countdown timer, I believe it was. But we'll maybe get back into that later on. On the downside, TinkerCAD doesn't have all the chips that Ben Ater was using for his CPU. I initially thought they would, and started off setting up the clock module, which is his first video in the CPU, 8-bit CPU series.
Well, that's all I have for now. Be sure to like, subscribe, and smash the bell button so you don't miss the next episode in this series, where we will dive directly into building and testing some electronic circuits using TinkerCAD and breadboards. Alright, see you next time.
Take it, button, yeah!